All right, old school NBA fans, self-researched NBA facts. Got another video for you. As always, thanks to anybody who watches my videos, subscribes to my channel. I really appreciate it. I want to give a special thanks to my man, Isle Sabag. Thank you so much for your very generous super thanks. I can't thank you enough for your support of this channel. It means a lot. In this video here, I caught a clip of Nick Wright, who once again puts his foot in his mouth, says the most ridiculous things, and this is no different. Get a load of this clip right here. It's the dumbest thing.
Okay, you're right. He has not won a title without Hall of Fame teammates. He has gotten to the finals without an all-star on his team, though.
So we're saying that, LeBron made it to the finals without an all-star on his team. Well, being technical, he actually won a championship without an all-star. But it is a ridiculous notion. One all-star champion teams is pretty common, actually. It's about once every 5 years or so. In fact, the all-star game started 1951, so we have 74 years of all-stars, because 1999 there was no all-star game due to the strike-shortened season. So in those 74 years, 4 champions had 4 all-stars, and I think 2 of those were the Celtics in the 60s. There were 30 champions that had 3 all-stars. That's the most common. 3 all-star champions is the most common. 2 all-stars happened 23 times. That's the second most. So of the 74 years here, 53 of them had either 2 or 3 all-stars. And if you want to throw the 4 in there, 57 of the 74 had multiple all-stars on the team. And then 15 times there's been 1 all-star. That one's still semi-common, but I wouldn't call it a super great feat. But here we'll take a look at who the 1 all-star champions were. It's important to note that I did miss one on here, and I will get to it. The very first year, 1951, when they even had an all-star game, Rochester won the championship. They beat Minneapolis. They were the only team in 6 years to beat Minneapolis in the playoffs. Pretty impressive, actually. Bob Davies of Rochester, they won the championship. He was the lone all-star, which makes this even more impressive that a team with 1 all-star beat the George Mikan, Jim Pollard, Vern Mickelson, Minneapolis Lakers. They disrupted a potential 6 championships in a row. It didn't happen again until 1975 when Golden State upset the Washington Bullets. They swept them, actually. It was unbelievable. Rick Barry was the only all-star on that team. However, he did have Jamal Wilkes, who was a Hall of Famer, but he was not an all-star in that year. So technically, Rick Barry was the lone all-star to win that championship. Now, the one I missed, speaking of the Washington Bullets, was 1978. And Elvin Hayes was the lone all-star for Washington. But what's very interesting about that particular championship, Billy Knight of Indiana, he got injured and was unable to play in the All-Star game. So Elvin Hayes took his spot. If Billy Knight would not have been injured and Elvin Hayes would not have been a replacement All-Star, then Washington would be the only team in NBA history to win a championship without an All-Star. That would have been something. Now, they had 3 Hall of Famers on their team. They had Wes Unseld, Elvin Hayes, Bob Dandridge. Trust me, that was a really good team. Didn't happen again until 1989, where somehow Isaiah Thomas was the only all-star of the 89 Pistons. I mean, Rodman, I think he won Defensive Player of the Year in 90, but he was first-team all-defense. I think Dumars was also first-team all-defense. But strictly going by all-stars, what Nick Wright said, Isaiah Thomas was the only all-star in that 1989 Pistons team. 1991, Chicago Bulls. Michael Jordan, the only all-star. Now, if we're going to get technical and say, yeah, but come on, man, Scottie Pippen, he was, an 8-time all-star? Like, you're being silly. That year, he was not an all-star. And at that point, Scottie Pippen was just a one-time all-star. The reference that Nick Wright was making was 2007, but he had Zydrunas Ilgauskas, who was a two-time All-Star. He's only 2 years removed from it. 2 years before, he made an All-Star in 05, and then he made it in 03. This guy wasn't like 37 years old or anything, but technically, yeah, you're right, Nick Wright. 1994, Hakeem Olajuwon, the only All-Star on the Rockets, and the next year in 1995, Olajuwon was also the lone All-Star. However, Clyde Drexler did make All-NBA, and Scottie Pippen in 91 made All-Defense. So if you want to say All-League, okay, that's a different conversation. The 1998 Chicago Bulls, just Michael Jordan. Why didn't Pippen make All-Star? Because he was hurt for half the year. But still, somehow, this dude made All-NBA, I believe, second team, and first team All-Defense, and you missed half the year. That one was always weird to me. But as it stands, he was the lone All-Star, Michael Jordan, of the 98 Bulls. The next time it happened was 2003 with Tim Duncan. That was a great run by Duncan. Ginobili and Parker, they were definitely not up to their primes yet. He did have a prime Bruce Bowen, and David Robinson was on his absolute literal last leg, his last season. He was 37, 38 years old. Duncan, a very deserving MVP that year. The very next season, Ben Wallace, only All-Star on the 2004 Pistons. So in 2003, Tim Duncan and the Spurs took down the Lakers, and then the next year, Ben Wallace and the Pistons took down the Lakers. So one All-Star teams took down the Lakers in 03 and 04. Now, I don't think that the All-Star thing is that big a deal, but Nick Wright is trying to make a point here. The next time it happened was 2011. Dirk Nowitzki, the only All-Star, won a championship. Now, yeah, he had Hall of Famer Jason Kidd on his team. I think Tyson Chandler might have been All-Defense. But as it stands, the only All-Star. Other guys made All-Stars before. Peja Stojakovic, you don't think he made All-Stars? Sean Marion, of course he made some All-Stars. And Kidd, of course, made a bunch of them. But we're going by Nick Wright here. 2014, the 62-win Spurs only had Tony Parker. That was it. As great as they were as a team, that was the absolute definition of a team. It was the 2014 Spurs. Ginobili, Parker, Gary Neal, Patty Mills, Bellinelli, Boris Diaw, Thiago Splitter, Duncan. I mean, it was a team. But even with that said, they were facing elimination in the first round to Dallas. Just saying. All the people in the LeBron camp who try to make excuses like, well, that team was all-time great. They're a dynasty. Like, well, it was a one-off championship. They're nowhere near that 03 to 07 dynasty. I just did a video on that. But Dallas in the first round gave a much better showing than the GOAT did in 2014. It is what it is. Then the GOAT in 2016, technically the only All-Star on the 2016 Cavaliers. They won a championship. Oh, it was a very legit one, too. There was no suspensions, no injuries. Curry was 100% and balling out. Yeah, if only that were the case. Then you could lend a lot more credence to this whole 73-9 Warriors being the best team ever BS. The next time it happened was in 2021 when Giannis had that great run on Milwaukee. He was the only All-Star. And then Nikola Jokic in 2023 was the only All-Star on his team going to a championship. Of course, that run wasn't really that impressive as far as the competition goes, but hey, it's a championship. They beat who was in front of them. You can't fault them for that. You can always compare players, teams, whatever by competition, sure. That's valid, but you can't necessarily fault someone for beating whoever. You didn't get beat by an inferior team. If you're not beating great teams, then the other side of it is, did you lose to an inferior team? And if you didn't lose to very many of them, then yeah, that's definitely a feather in your cap. And Jokic hasn't lost to very many. Directly to Nick Wright's point, talking about LeBron did take a team to the finals without an All-Star on his team. Well, here's the non-champion teams that made it to the finals with one All-Star. It's as common as dirt. I'll go through it real quick. 1974 Milwaukee Bucks. Now, technically, they had Bob Dandridge, a Hall of Famer, Oscar Robertson, a top 20 all-time player, maybe top 15. But technically, Kareem was the only All-Star. The Phoenix Suns, 1976. They only had rookie Alvin Adams as the only All-Star on that team. The only team in NBA history to make the finals without an All-Star, the 1978 Seattle Supersonics. No All-Stars on that team. If Billy Knight would have been healthy and played in the All-Star game and Elvin Hayes never would have made the All-Star game, well, then that means Seattle and Washington in 1978, neither team would have had an All-Star. That would have been nuts. 1980, 76ers. They had Dr. J and no one else. The very next season, 1981, Houston had Moses Malone and no one else. 1988, Isaiah Thomas, the only All-Star on that team. That team was loaded. Bill Laimbeer, a four-time All-Star. Adrian Dantley, a Hall of Famer, two-time scoring champ. Dennis Rodman, two-time Defensive Player of the Year, two-time All-NBA, I don't know how many All-Defenses, rebound titles. Joe Dumars, he's got like 7 All-Stars, 6 or 7 All-Defenses, he's got All-NBAs, but technically in that season of 1988, they made it to the finals with just Isaiah Thomas as the All-Star. 1990 and 1992, Portland Trailblazers, just Clyde Drexler. The funny thing is, there was a lot of guys on that team that had multiple All-Stars. Kevin Duckworth, a 2-time All-Star. Terry Porter, a 2-time All-Star. Buck Williams, I know he made All-NBA, All-Defense, like 4 or 5 of them. Definitely multiple All-Stars for him. But technically speaking, like Nick Wright said, without an All-Star on his team. 1998, Utah Jazz. Karl Malone, the only All-Star on Utah. John Stockton got hurt and was out, I think, 18 games. Well, that was enough to kick him out of the All-Star game. And John Stockton's at least a top 35 all-time player, but doesn't matter. Going by what Nick Wright has to say, because this stuff can get really stupid really quick. 2001, Allen Iverson. He was the only All-Star on his team. Dikembe Mutombo was Defensive Player of the Year. Didn't matter, though, because he didn't make the All-Star game. 2002, 2003, back-to-back years. Jason Kidd, the only All-Star on New Jersey. It's fairly common, wouldn't you say, especially in that time. 2005, Ben Wallace made the finals as the only All-Star on his team. The next year, 2006, Dirk Nowitzki, the only All-Star on that team. 2007, LeBron James. There you go, Nick Wright. 2008, Kobe Bryant, the only All-Star on that team. And then the super team era kicked in, and nobody did it from 2009 to 2021. But then in 2022, Jason Tatum was the only All-Star on Boston. 2023, Bam Adebayo, the only All-Star on Miami. 2024, Luka Doncic, the only All-Star on Dallas. And 2025, Pascal Siakam, the only All-Star in Indiana, although Tyrese Halliburton made All-NBA. Stupid, really quick. So that's 20 teams that reached the finals but lost the championship with just one All-Star. You count the 15 teams that won with just one All-Star, that's 35 in 75 years. And actually 74 if you want to minus 1999 who didn't have an All-Star game. So that's about half. That's as common as dirt, Nick Wright. What's the big deal about that? Now, if you want to say like, well, I meant like he didn't have a Hall of Famer on his team or whatever. That's another list that would be long. Right off the top of my head, Hakeem Olajuwon won 1994 championship without a Hall of Famer on his team. 2019 Toronto. Only Kawhi Leonard is the only Hall of Famer on that team, unless somehow Kyle Lowry gets in. But this whole Hall of Famers, All-Stars, what does it really matter? A team's record definitely is a good indicator, but you have to take into account the health of the league. If you look at the 1993 Knicks, they got one Hall of Famer on their team, but they won 60 games. So what? They were a bad team? I heard Colin Cowherd say, well, they didn't have any shooters. Actually, they did have a couple, but that's not the strength of their team. It was defense and it was interior play. But so what? Are the 93 Knicks better than the 2015 Atlanta Hawks? if they would have played a 7-game series, the Knicks are winning that thing in 4 or 5 games. There's no doubt in my mind. How many failed experiments have we had of Hall of Famers linking up? Now, I don't know if Paul George is going to be a Hall of Famer, but didn't he once play with Russell Westbrook and Chris Paul in Oklahoma City? I could be wrong about that. That's right around the time where I stopped watching the NBA. But how many examples are there of all these people linking up? Look at the Clippers. They literally just had Paul George, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and Russell Westbrook on the same team. That was like, 2 years ago? They got beat in the first round. That doesn't mean anything. I hate the Hall of Famer, All-Star counting people. 2011 Dallas had Jason Kidd at 39 years old. Are we to believe that, they got beat, but it was the 2 Hall of Famers? I mean, come on. Jason Kidd was actually playing pretty good for a 39-year-old, but he wasn't 29-year-old Jason Kidd. Even Nowitzki, he was like a week away from his 33rd birthday. He wasn't 27-year-old Dirk. He was still very effective, probably 85, 90% as good as he was, but he wasn't prime Dirk. Either way, it's just stupid. Everything needs to be done on a case-by-case basis, period. So anyway, that's all I got for this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked it, please hit the like button. If you wouldn't mind sharing it, that would be great. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. I give daily content. And that's it. Until next time.